The Tennessee legislature continues to embarrass me on a regular basis, but as my father would say, they come by it honest, meaning being embarrassing is hereditary for Tennessee lawmakers. For example, in 1925 they passed the Butler Act, a bill banning the teaching of evolution in Tennessee schools. Realizing this absurd action would brand their state as a haven for stupidity, local business interests and the ACLU recruited a young Dayton, Tennessee teacher, John Scopes, to violate the act by deliberately reading a passage about evolution from a biology textbook to his students. They expected the resulting trial would gain nationwide attention and put their town on the map, and boy were they ever right. Surrounded by a circus-like atmosphere, the trial ran from July 10th through July 25th, 1925. In Dayton, with former presidential candidate and anti-evolution crusader William Jennings Bryan acting as a prosecutor and famous attorney Clarence Darrow leading the defense. The proceedings were broadcast to the nation on Chicago radio station WGN, a first for the medium. Only slightly less dramatic than the stage and film versions of the trial, both called Inherit the Wind, the judge kept the trial narrowly focused on whether the law had been violated and not on whether evolution was valid or not, but he did allow Darrow to entice Bryan onto the witness stand as an expert on the Bible, where Darrow ridiculed Bryan's stance and won the battle against ignorance in the public mind. Perhaps drained by the experience and the extremely hot weather, Bryan passed away in his sleep 5 days later in Dayton. Although Scopes was found guilty and fined $100, the verdict was vacated on appeal. The appeals court said the jury, not the judge, should have set the penalty. The Butler Act was in effect for another 42 years, though no one else was ever charged during that time. I entered high school in 1963 and had never heard a word about evolution in school, but I was already a believer because the wider culture was not under the same restrictions as Tennessee teachers. The movies and TV shows I watched and the books I read all accepted evolution as fact, so I did too. When I took biology my sophomore year in high school, my teacher, Mrs. Hamlin, told us, "I can't teach you about chapter 12, but there's nothing stopping you from reading it on your own." So I did. Be warned, those who would suppress the truth because it violates your deeply held beliefs, your kids will see right through your clumsy efforts. Just before I graduated in April of 1967, a young Jacksboro, Tennessee teacher named Gary Scott was fired for violating the law, even though he wasn't aware it existed. He sued for his job back, and the Tennessee legislature decided to repeal the law in May of the same year. Shortly thereafter, the copycat bans in Arkansas and Mississippi were declared unconstitutional. The battle wasn't over, however. The Tennessee legislature tried to mess with evolution again in 1973 by passing a law requiring the teaching of so-called creationism on an equal footing with evolution, but that law was declared unconstitutional in 1975. The current climate in Tennessee is such that I expect to see the Butler Act revived any day now. The Republican supermajority has so far banned the teaching of critical race theory, which no one has ever taught below the graduate level, followed the Florida fiasco of banning books from schools and libraries, allowed vouchers for private school tuition, and tried to establish a statewide network of right-wing charter schools featuring a curriculum developed by Hillsdale College. The battle against ignorance, it seems, never ends. At least not in Tennessee.